Joining me now is the Australian's foreign editor, Greg Sheridan. Greg, good to see you. You wrote a great piece in The Australian today asking, is Anthony Albanese actually trying intentionally, for reasons best known to himself, to diminish, if not undermine, the US-Australia alliance? So, Greg, I'm going to ask you the question. Is Anthony Albanese actually trying, for reasons best known to himself, to diminish, if not undermine, the US-Australia alliance?
Well, great to be with you, Danica. Look, the answer is I don't know. I don't know. I've always really liked Albo personally. He'll hate to hear me say that because I've been so critical of him lately. But he comes from the left. He worked for Tom Uren, who was a, vehemently anti-American leftist. And there's no evidence that Albanese ever gave national security a minute's thought before he became leader of the party. And I think now we look back on the hawkish things he said as opposition leader and in his first year in government, and the suspicion grows that those were the things he felt he had to say politically. He didn't really believe them. This was a bizarre speech. I mean, Curtin's whole wartime prime ministership was about keeping Britain and America both connected to Australia and in defence of Australia. And far from declaring any independence from America, Curtin put the whole of the Australian Defence Force under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur was like a wartime overlord in Australia, and that was a smart policy for Curtin. Curtin was not some kumbaya Asianist. Curtin was, the World War II equivalent of Vladimir Zelensky saying, please help, our country is in terrible trouble. And the people who came to help were the Americans. We're independent. We remain independent because of the American naval battles of Coral Sea and Midway. Our men fought heroically in New Guinea as well. But Albanese has presented the absolute stark opposite of what Curtin really was. It's a ridiculous speech historically. He says Curtin founded the American alliance. That's untrue. The Americans wouldn't have an alliance with Australia in the late 1940s. Partly because they didn't trust Doc Evatt, who was part of the Labor government. And the Menzies government founded the alliance in 1951. But the bigger question is, why did Albanese make such a bizarre speech? Is he trying to provoke the Americans into killing off AUKUS? Therefore, he won't have to spend any money on the nuclear submarines. He still won't increase the defence budget, I bet. And he can sort of run that as standing up to Trump's bullying. Albanese, even at the level of politics, should be very careful about this, though. Trump is very unpopular, but the American alliance is very popular.
Yeah, and I think it would be naive of us to think that we need to be independent from the United States right now. And I've got to say, Greg, I found the speech more favourable to China than the US. He said, quote, Labor was patiently and deliberately working to stabilise our relationship with China. We know that the Prime Minister is about to go to Beijing. He's had 4 meetings with China, none with Trump. Why is Anthony Albanese so at ease with China?
Well, because they flatter him, and because I don't think he's ever accepted the national security view of China. In private conversation, he always regarded, before he became leader, he always regarded China as extremely benign and thought the China threat stuff was wildly exaggerated. Now, you'd think a guy who sits around the National Security Committee of Cabinet would grow up and change his view. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull had a benign view of China, but once he became Prime Minister and saw all the intelligence and everything, he became very, very tough-minded indeed, and outlines it all in his memoir. But also this idea of becoming independent of America, what does this even mean? We rely 100% on American technical intelligence, for example, to show us what ships and planes are moving in our own region. This Labor government, Albanese's government, abolished the program to have low Earth orbit satellites for civilian use, but which would have also had military use, and abolished the program to have military satellites for secure communication. So it's determined we're not going to have any capability of our own. So we are 100% dependent on the Americans. Now, if you were really claiming you were going to be somehow or other more independent of the Americans, well, you'd have to triple or quadruple or quintuple the defence effort. You'd have to have all your own satellites and make your own missiles and all the rest. Well, Albanese won't spend $1 on defence. We have a ridiculously anemic defence budget. So what is he up to? This is just, I think, crass politics and a wildly unrealistic view of a benign China, and thinking that it's smart to be at war with Trump, or not, if not at war with Trump, distant from Trump. It's not even clear that he can't get an interview with Trump. I don't think he's willing to go to Washington to meet Trump in the Oval Office because he doesn't want Trump to commit him to defence spending or to some formulation on China. This is an abdication of leadership, and Curtin would be ashamed of Albanese.
Yeah, good. That's a really, really good point. And I also just think he's so scared. He's so scared of Donald Trump. He's scared of what might happen, even though so many world leaders have already been there. Greg Sheridan, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening. Appreciate it.